Really excited to be here with Corbett Barr. I've been a fan of his work for years. I was actually a member in the Fizzle community a couple years ago, and been listening to the podcast and just recently kind of reconnected with this content. Corbett, it's really great to have you here.
George, thank you so much. I'm honored to be on.
Yeah, so I have some great questions for you that I think a lot of my audience will benefit from. I have people who are aspiring creators in my audience, and also some who are experienced and want to do even better. But the first question, since the way I think about you, you're kind of like me, but you're 100 times more successful. So now I'm going to pick
I
your brain
doubt
a bit,
that.
and I think my audience will benefit from this. So the first question really is, I think my audience identifies. I don't know if they identify with the term creator. Sometimes I use that, sometimes I don't. But since your audience does, and you use that term a lot, I want you to define creator as the way you think about it now. What is a creator?
Well, a creator is someone who makes things, right? Um, but today, I think we often spend time talking about, I think, what people are calling the creator economy. And that's this new world that we live in where an individual can make things and sell them to other people on a scale that's big enough to earn a living from. I guess you could say that that's existed for as long as humans have had commerce in general. But now we have so many platforms that allow us to do that online. People are selling audio, video, text, courses, all kinds of digital experiences. And they're doing that on platforms like Twitch, YouTube, on your own blog, your own podcast. All of those people are independent creators, I would say.
Yeah, this is great. This is very helpful. And so imagine you had a few minutes with somebody who is an aspiring creator, somebody who listens to this audio or watches the video and says, "I would love to also be independent from my job, to be able to make a living, sharing what I love, creating what I love." So they're an aspiring creator. They may have gotten started a little bit, or they may have are maybe they're thinking about it. You have a few minutes with them. What must they absolutely know, or what would you want to share with them?
Well, there's kind of two sides to it, and I would say that there is the internal emotional side that all of us as entrepreneurs have to go through, and a lot of times when someone gives up or quits or doesn't make it to their end goal, it ends up involving a lot of personal baggage, feelings, all that sort of stuff plays a big role into it. So there's a big mental aspect to being an entrepreneur. And I think most of us are unprepared for that. And we don't realize just how intense the emotional roller coaster is that we will go on within this journey at being an entrepreneur. So I would counsel people to be aware of that, to watch out for that, and to try to observe themselves and how they react to things. Because those who succeed are the ones who recognize that being an entrepreneur is full of uncertainty. And the sooner you can get comfortable living with that uncertainty, with not knowing what the future holds, with what even today or tomorrow holds, and whether or not something that you try will work, whether or not you have what it takes to actually, become an entrepreneur, to be successful at it, all of that uncertainty plays a role. So that's kind of the first side, the emotional side. The second side is the realities of the marketplace and understanding that as entrepreneurs, our job is fairly simple. It is to identify problems, needs, desires that exist in the world out there, figure out a way to create solutions to those, and then to get that solution in front of people in a way that they're willing to pay for. And I love that entrepreneurship or business in general can be distilled to such a simple, small thought or phrase. And yet it's the kind of thing that you can study for many, many years. It's sort of like playing chess or something else that appears simple at first. And then you recognize that you could dedicate an entire career, and many people do, just to understanding it. So as an entrepreneur, I like to tell people to think of themselves as almost a scientist, where you're coming up with a hypothesis. You believe that there are people out there who are struggling with this or who really want that, and that you will be able to provide a solution to that in a way that they'll be willing to pay for. Now, if you're wrong, you want to put yourself into a position where that's okay. You're wrong. This is just a hypothesis. And all the time, scientists go into a study believing that this might be true, but the point of the study is to find out whether or not it is true. So you go into this as an entrepreneur, basically studying this, creating this thing, putting it out there, finding out if people want it or not. And if they don't want it, you have to recognize that it's not up to you necessarily to change people's minds. It's up to you to understand why they don't want it, and then to either improve the product, reach different people, or do whatever it takes to find that success. But I love that hypothesis mindset because it really kind of sets people up to understand that being successful as a business builder, as an independent creator, whatever you want to call it, is really about the long-term success as an entrepreneur, and not necessarily about the individual success of any one product or service or offering that you create.
It's brilliant. I love that. And thank you for framing it that way. The mindset component, internal emotional equanimity with all this. And there's the marketplace, or you might say the technical, experimental, scientific part of it. So you could say there's an artist and scientist, part of it. But, you said to be comfortable with uncertainty. I think it's really interesting because, I think the reason why people, I imagine, get jobs instead of being a creator working for themselves is that there's a lot more certainty to it. In fact, I have a friend right now who's trying to recruit me for a job. I love the guy. I'm like, I'd love to work with you, but I got to stay independent, man. Partly to be a model for my people.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
It's interesting because I think in a job, it's funny the way I think about it. It's like, yeah, with a creator, there might be uncertainty in the beginning, but I think as we follow, I mean, there is such a thing as good strategy, right? I mean, otherwise there wouldn't be trainings in Fizzle.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is a pathway that others have shown generally this seems to work, or these principles work. This overall pathway, if you follow it, you'll be able to create certainty faster than if you just didn't follow any kind of pathway at all. And so I think with the creator, they start with uncertainty. Hopefully, they create more certainty over time. And I think it's probably true. I mean, if you were to launch anything today, given that you already have an audience, there is more. You have a better guess that it's probably going to sell at least this many units at the minimum. If you were just right. Whereas a job, it's funny, like in the beginning you start with certainty, and I think there may be growing uncertainty over time that is this really what I really want to do. So and you talked about experimentation. I think this is scary for a lot of people, creators. And do you have any kind of counsel for how do we experiment in a way that doesn't break the bank, or isn't too embarrassing?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that you bring up that embarrassment, right? And again, we're talking about the two sides of this coin. There's the emotional side, right? Because what does it really matter if you're embarrassed? But this is the truth, especially for a lot of us who have been in careers for a while. I spent a lot of time in not a lot of time, but a decade in a career where I worked in big corporations, Fortune 500s. And when you go out on your own, there is this sense of worry that if you fail, everyone's going to laugh at you, right? And that people will say, well, of course, like who did George think he was to leave his job and become an entrepreneur, and why is he so special? Of course, today we see more and more examples, I think, of people being successful, so it seems more possible, but that is something to think about. The other thing to think about is that the biggest risk you face as an entrepreneur is that you're going to spend a bunch of time on something only to release it to the world and find out that nobody actually wants it or that no one is willing to pay for it. So to me, the risk can be either minimized or you can sort of ignore the risk and make it worse than it needs to be. And to minimize it, you want to get as close as possible to your customers as early as you can and have conversations with these people, the people that you believe will actually be buying this thing because they're the people that are struggling with the problem or they have the need or desire that you're trying to fulfill. And a lot of people, unfortunately, I think, feel like entrepreneurship is sort of like being an inventor, where you go away into your laboratory and construct something amazing over the course of a couple of years. And then you unleash your genius on the world, and everybody says, "Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you so much." Whereas in reality, most successful products are built with a lot of consultation with the people who might be buying them. And I learned this the hard way myself. In my early attempts at being an entrepreneur, I did something that was, I would call it product first entrepreneurship. And that means I would build something and then go and look for the people that I thought might want this thing. And then later I discovered that you can build something audience first, and you can start to engage people around the topic that you're interested in. And then you can ask them and you can find out, like, well, how does this affect your life? What other solutions have you tried? And have this early sense of, okay, well, if I built this, maybe there is a little bit more certainty because these people have told me that they might be interested in. And then instead of building it and trying to make it perfect, you just build a small like example of the thing that they might want to buy, or maybe you even offer it first as a service instead of building something as a product. And let's say that you have this idea for an online course and you want to teach people. Well, instead of spending the months it takes to build a good online course, maybe you just offer it as a service, and a couple of things will happen. First, you learn whether or not anyone even wants to buy it without having to build the thing first. And then you can deliver it in a way where you're getting a lot of feedback, right, from people as you're delivering the service, because you're actually one-on-one or maybe with a small group of people. And then you learn how your proposed solution is actually being used, how useful it is, and so on, so that when you go on to build the product, you've reduced the risk that someone will actually buy it, and you've increased the chances that it's going to be useful to them.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that distinction between the product first mode, or we might even say, sometimes I say it's like the passion first mode versus the compassion first mode, right? It's like, now here's the thing people might say, but I know what they need. you know, I know that if they only understood how great this product is, it would really solve their problem or meet their desires. Why don't they understand? George, isn't it your job as a marketer to make them want this thing? Isn't it job of a copywriter or a branding expert an advertising expert to find me an audience and make them want it? And what would you say to
Yes.
that?
Yes. To some degree, you're right, but you have to meet customers where they are. They
Mm,
have to already have the problem or the need or the desire. Your job as a marketer is to explain to them why your product fulfills that problem or need or desire, but it already has to be within them. And I can tell you from experience that it's a long, painful road of trying to educate your customers on why they have a problem in the first place, why your solution might be a fit, and so on. It's much easier if people are in the desert and need a glass of water, right? We talk about the difference between vitamins and painkillers. And
mm,
certainly there's a market for vitamins, but if you can sell painkillers because someone has an acute need, it makes it much easier. And I think the problem that a lot of entrepreneurs get into is they're not even selling vitamins. They're selling something that doesn't have even that much utility and trying to convince people of why they're so great. And you mentioned the word compassion earlier. I think empathy is another great thing to have as an entrepreneur, to try to put yourself in that person's shoes and not see your product as your baby, something that you poured your heart and soul into, but just try to understand it from their point of view. And if you were them, would you want to buy this thing? And a lot of times the answer is no. If you didn't have a direct connection to this thing, you wouldn't care, because it doesn't rise to the level of something that filters through all the noise that we are surrounded by every day. We have a million things competing for our attention, for our pocketbook, and so on. So again, you want to meet customers where they are, find that need, find that desire that they have. And then your job as a marketer is to be able to, first of all, find that audience of people who have that problem. And then second of all, present your products in a way that makes them want to buy it to solve that problem.
Yeah, yeah, this is very good. Now, one of the products these days for creators that is so profitable, and in some ways it can be quite easy to create, is online courses.
Mhm.
And a lot of the people who are listening or watching to this right now want to create online courses or have heard of it, and they can imagine themselves doing it. But I've also, but there's a common issue or question that they have, which is, how does this differ from just content that I create on YouTube or
Mm.
on a podcast or in a blog post? I mean, uh, blog posts as an example, people start learning about SEO and oh, it's supposed to be what I'm supposed to essentially write Wikipedia entries,
Mm.
like I'm supposed to give away the farm. Same thing with videos. Oh, YouTube should not be making half-hour long tutorials that go in depth into every single thing. Well, then there's of course the kind of the Patreon model where it's like, well, I'm such a generous person. Can you just give me a few bucks a month? That'd be great if enough people did that. I've tried that myself, and I have found that selling online courses is much more viable for livelihood in a
Mhm.
shorter time frame. But what is your thought on this? Because I mean, you of course have a very successful membership community, which we'll talk about shortly. It's called Fizzle, and it's awesome. And there's a lot of online courses within Fizzle. So how do you advise the creators in your community to differentiate between the free and the paid?
Yeah. A lot of it comes down to packaging and the sum of the parts, because there is this kind of race to offer everything for free, right? And I know that you can feel a little disheartened when you realize that something that you have as a great idea might exist out there for free already. And in fact, a lot of these things do. If you go on YouTube, you can find tutorials on just about anything. I'll tell you that in my work, I spend maybe half of my time working on things that are free. And those things that I produce for free are out there with the intention of reaching a new audience, gaining trust with those people, letting them understand that I have expertise that might be useful to them. But then I spend the other half of my time working on building things that people pay for. And the reason that people pay for things, even though a lot of the information that I have to share is out there for free, is because they want me to guide them from start to finish through the process. They want someone to hold their hand. And they, in my case, want to experience that in concert with other people at the same time. So, in an online course, you often have multiple people going through it at the same time. The students are able to ask you questions directly. The information is all packaged up in a way that you can consume it from start to finish. And I think, you can ask yourself in your own life, people that have this concern about, well, how do I know what to put out there for free? You've probably bought a book where you saw someone give an interview and you thought, oh, that person's really interesting, I'm going to go buy their book. Or maybe there's someone that you follow on social media and you love everything that they put out, and then you end up buying something from them. I think it's a natural transition to either want to go deeper into the topic and actually make progress as opposed to passively consuming something. And paying something puts skin in the game for you. It returns additional benefits and features. And then also sometimes it is in reward for the things that someone has given you for free and that you end up wanting to support that person. And, I just did this recently. I just bought an online course a couple of days ago. It was $300 to someone that I have spent a lot of time following, on social media and so on. And I've gotten a lot just from the free things. And the course itself gave me more. I can't tell you if it was exactly $300 of value or not, but I don't really care because I really have gotten a lot from this person, well more than that amount of money, whether it was in the free channels or the paid channels, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And actually, that's one of the main reasons I joined Fizzle when I did years ago, is because I was getting so much from listening to the podcast and kind of reading the blog posts, et cetera. I feel like I only dipped into 3% of what was available for free. And of course, inside Fizzle is interaction that you don't get. The way I think about it is like with an online course that you pay for, the creator has more accountability to interact with you in a helpful way than just replying to a YouTube comment, which there's no expectation that if they're busy, they might never, and that's normal, for a creator that has that's a big audience.
Yep.
So I want to make sure people who are here know about Fizzle and know about why it's different than just going on YouTube or whatever. So Fizzle has been around, was it 9 years?
Yeah, I believe
Amazing.
we're coming up on 9 years at the end of this year.
Astounding. And how many, I mean, one of the great things about Fizzle is that there's a community of people that you can tap into, peers, resources, support, mutual support. How many people are in Fizzle that you can tap into? How many members are?
Yeah, there are hundreds of members in Fizzle. I don't know the exact count at the moment.
Okay.
We have ebbed and flowed. We've had over, I think at the peak, maybe 1,500 members.
Yeah.
And we've served over 26,000 people over the years.
Yeah. So a lot of experience in leading people on an effective strategy towards becoming a successful creator. What are some of the favorite things people love about? And by the way, I should just say, folks should definitely check it out. It's fizzle.co.co.
Yep.
One thing I've always wanted to ask you guys, I'm sure you guys explained this somewhere, but why Fizzle? Why? What's the origin of the name?
Yeah. So, Fizzle with the connotation of things fizzle out, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the truth is, most small business dreams end up fizzling out. And we called it that mostly to remind us of what's at stake, because everyone who comes to Fizzle has the intention of building something meaningful, maybe of earning a living, quitting their day job, all that kind of stuff. But the reality is that most people don't end up following through on it. And they don't know, there's no like big moment when they give up on that dream. It's more like just a slow, quiet thing. But that is the reality of what happens. Now, with naming, and this is, we have a course on naming inside of Fizzle.
Yeah.
Eventually, any name that you give something takes on a life of its own, a meaning of its own. And now Fizzle doesn't mean fizzling out into the members. It just means Fizzle. That is what it is. It's sort of like if you think about Virgin Airlines or monster.com, there are all kinds of, or Yahoo, there are all kinds of names that have connotations, and they just take on a life of their own. In fact, inside of Fizzle, members are called Fizzlers. It's just, it's just what it is.
Yeah, it's awesome. So what are one or two favorite things about Fizzle that members really enjoy?
Well, the weekly coaching calls are definitely up there. And that's mostly because, Fizzle ends up being a bit like a gym membership, I would say. And there are a lot of people in Fizzle, taking courses and so on. But there are resources that only a handful actually take advantage of. So if you show up for those weekly live calls, you're getting a tremendous value, because you're in there with a small couple dozen people that you get to see every week, and you get to follow people's progress, learn what works, learn what doesn't, and so on. And it just is a really close knit and very supportive community, I would say. We have people sharing all kinds of things. You know, you and I, we talked earlier about the emotional side and the technical know-how side. And the emotional side is something that I feel like a lot of us have to kind of keep to ourselves, or we feel like we have to. But in Fizzle, people really open up and talk about what they're struggling with, and it feels good to get it out.
Fizzle is so affordable too. It's only at this time of this recording, it's $40 US per month, and that's compared to my membership is 111 a month. So I just want to encourage everybody who would like just all you can eat business and marketing training that's very well curated, very well done from experienced creators to check out Fizzle. It's fizzle.co, not .com, but .co, fizzle.co. Of course, the links will be in the notes below. Any final kind of encouraging insight or yeah, just as we complete this interview, Corbett?
Well, if you are thinking about being an independent creator, I would say that a lot of us focus on the end goal or some level of success that we're trying to realize. But as you look back, I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years now. I recognize that pursuing entrepreneurship was the greatest path towards self discovery and self realization that I could go on.
Yeah.
And I think most of us as entrepreneurs recognize that. You talked earlier about a friend who is trying to convince you to take a job and you're like, no, I need to remain independent. Well, that's because you've learned a lot about yourself on that journey. And I'm not saying that entrepreneurship is for everyone. Obviously it's not. And there are plenty of situations where working for someone else might be a better option.
Sure.
But I just want to encourage people not to focus entirely on the monetary rewards and the uncertainty that lies ahead, but instead to focus on the things that you're going to learn about yourself by trying to build something and put it out in the world. There's some magic that happens there when you do that. And a lot of it will be painful, but through that pain will come growth.
Brilliant. The more we focus on that, the more we can value the journey. And if we value the journey, we'll stay with it. And of course, comes the monetary rewards as well.
Exactly.
Corbett, thank you so much for being part of this interview. I really appreciate your work. And I hope folks will check out your blog, your podcast, and fizzle.co. So thank you so much.
Thank you, George. I appreciate it.